Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Anderson. Welcome to The Road Not Taken, how ordinary people get out of your own way and you can too. I'm excited to introduce my guest today is Robert Young in Singapore. So welcome, Robin. Robert, I was wondering if you could perhaps say a few words to introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello, everybody. Skyping in from Singapore. I just want to start by saying I had an incredible journey in the life insurance business. Was my fourth attempt when I made it.
And I know in more recent years you've spoken all over Asia to many thousands of people on many occasions. So I'm fascinated to learn kind of how you made that shift from where you started. So, but to start things out, can you perhaps just explain what it was? I mean, I know you had difficult times when you started in the life insurance business. Can you talk about what it was that prompted you to, I guess, to want to succeed at it? You know, was there a certain day when you decided, you know, I've had enough and I really want to be more successful?
Well, I actually started in the business in 1973 when I was 21. And I bombed out after 6 months. I couldn't take the cold calls.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, my boss said, you know, you got to get referrals, you got to talk to strangers. And I said I had so many friends, I wouldn't be able to finish the list. In 6 months, I finished the list.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you got to do cold calls. I said, I'm not going to do cold calls. I don't like this rejection bit. So I bombed out. The advertisement from Singapore Airlines came out for flight stewards. And I took the easy way out. I joined the airlines.
Okay. And so what prompted you to go back and give it another go?
And then in 1975, I was broke. I just wanted some extra money.
Mm-hmm.
I came back to the business part-time, did some extra sales. And after 6 months, I just couldn't hack it. I left the business again. It came back in 1977
Okay.
For another 6 months, and I couldn't do it. So what happened in 1977 was I actually had a girlfriend then who broke up with me.
Mm-hmm.
She was actually from a wealthy family. And every time when I go on flight, when I come back, she'll be at the airport waiting for me in her sports car.
Okay.
And she didn't show up. I was actually staying with her in a home.
Mm-hmm.
So I came home to my mom's, and my mom said, "What you doing here? You don't live here, you know. You haven't lived here for 2 years." And I kept calling my girlfriend, and she wasn't home. We don't have mobile phones at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So next morning, I called her in the office. I said, "You weren't at the airport last night." I said, "Where were you?" She said, "I was out." And next question, of course, is with who, right? She was out with another guy, and I was so heartbroken. And she said, "Robert, I guess she was ready to get married, and I wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
financially, of course." But so anyway, cut the long story short, we broke up, and I was really heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
I actually checked into a hotel that night, and I had serious thoughts about killing myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I did open the window. At that time, you could open the window, and I almost jumped, and then I said, "Ooh, it was a bit scary."
Mm-hmm.
I closed the window again. I thought of maybe I'll starve myself to death. Don't eat for 10 days, lock the hotel room door. And I was imagining things like the papers will come up with the headlines, flight steward dies of a broken heart and empty stomach, something like that.
Yeah.
Next morning, I was so hungry, I ordered room service and I didn't kill myself.
Okay.
But it took me 3 more years before I had the courage to leave the airlines and come back to life insurance. By then, I was really tired of being broke all the time.
Right. What I'm interested in is the fact that for those listening, some of you are familiar with my background, but I've coached over 1,000 people, and most of them have been in financial services. I've never met anyone I've lost track of how long I've been in business, 17 years or something, 18 years, something like that. I've never met anyone that went back more than once. So this is most unusual to hear such a story. What? There must have been some layer of hope, something inside of you that thought that it was still worth going back. I mean, because obviously, there's lots of other sales industries. What was it that kept you going back?
In 1973, I actually accidentally stumbled onto the life insurance business. After my military service, we had to do compulsory military service. I didn't plan for my running out date, we call it, when you finish your 3 years. I was an army officer. The next day I was jobless. My friend said, let's go to a business meeting. And I ended up in a business meeting it was called Holiday Magic. It was a pyramid sales company.
Okay.
First time in my life I heard this guy on the video saying, mediocrity is by choice. Success is also by choice. And then he went on, and then I invested $300. I borrowed $300. I put it into the company, gave me a box of cosmetics. He said, if you sell it, you make your money back. But we're not really interested in you selling the cosmetics. We want you to sell the franchises. Get people to buy these boxes, and then you become an organizer and a master organizer, and soon you'll be sitting on top of a pile of money and you don't have to work. It sounded good. So I put my money in, and 2 weeks later the government investigated and said that this is fraud, and they closed it down. So I went to another business meeting and ended up in a life insurance company. It was AIA.
Okay.
Yeah. And on my first day of lesson, you don't have to apply for a job. You don't have to apply to become an agent. They will take anyone who can walk and talk. So first day of lesson, my boss told me that if I were to put $100 with the company and I cross the street and I get hit by a bus, my mother would get $100,000. So I said, this sounds like a bigger fraud than the last one that I came to. But it was true. When I was hooked onto this product called life insurance, and to me it's an incredible financial product. And to me at that time, my first conclusion was that a person must be an idiot if he doesn't buy life insurance. I believed in the business. I believed that it's great. It's good for people to save money, insure themselves. But I couldn't hack the work discipline. So I kept coming back was because I believe that it's something that I can sell, except that maybe I wasn't ready for it at the time. So in 1980, when you're in basement 4, you just have to make a decision, and I just quit my job. You see, by quitting the job, there's no turning back. I explored other options of other sales jobs, but it's not going to give me the money I want. But I know that life insurance, if you really work hard at it, you can be successful. And more importantly, the work that you do is meaningful.
Right. Was there a time lapse between the heartbreak from the girlfriend leaving to when you went back the 4th time to life insurance?
Yes.
In other words, because you sound like obviously you were at an incredible low point in your life, and then how long before you went back into life insurance?
3 years.
Oh, it was 3 more years before you went back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people, when they sit on a razor blade, and it's cutting your backside, they just won't leave until you cannot tolerate the pain.
Right.
So it took me 3 years to finally say, look, I cannot go on like this anymore. I just cannot go on. I was just struggling to make ends meet. You live from paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes the paycheck is gone before the month is gone.
Right.
I can't take this. I guess you can put it this way. My turning point was when there's this saying, the truth will set you free. The truth will set you free. And I think finally when I was at that age, 28, I grew up. I always tell people I grew up at a very late age. I finally realized that if I don't do something about my life, if I don't take charge of it, if I don't do what I have to do, it's gone. So I bit the bullet.
And then a few minutes ago, you said that you made some comment about, just trying to find it in my notes, I couldn't hack the work discipline. So it sounds like the 4th time around you did. Can you elaborate? What do you mean by work discipline that you didn't have before?
The work discipline, you see, selling life insurance is not difficult. You're just talking with people. The work disciplines of prospecting, of making the calls, going to the appointments, getting the rejection, getting yourself uh, prepping yourself up again and try the next person. The work disciplines were difficult. I didn't like that. I couldn't handle rejection, basically.
Yeah. So talk about how did you get past that then? Over time, you obviously did.
Get used to it.
Yeah.
Because I said, if I don't do this, there's nothing else that I can do or that I want to do. And when you're faced with the kind of situation when you can't turn back and say, I want to be a flight steward again, or the salary job for, at that time, maybe $1,000 if I'm lucky, a month, $1,000. I said, it's either make or break. And then I realized that if you want to get something done, you got to do it whether you like it or not. You know, self-discipline. That I got to do something that I must do something. I will do what I have to do when I have to do it, whether I like it or not.
Right. Well, that's massive. So what kinds of things did you do then this fourth time around? So you said you got used to getting rejected. What else did you do differently?
I used to tell people, my first 3 attempts at selling life insurance, I carried one bag, one briefcase. In it was my calculator, my rate book, my application forms. And I just couldn't do it. But the 4th time around, I had 2 bags. The same bag that carried my calculator and my premium book. But the other bag was what I call my bag of dreams. It was an imaginary bag. And I realized that if you really want to do something, you can get it done. And then I opened my bag of dreams, which is, I want a nicer home, I want a better life. I came from a poor family, I don't want that when I get married. And I opened both bags frequently. I guess you can call it self-motivation. When you have a desire for something and you make it grow, when you really want something, you will move heaven and hell to get it.
Right.
So I just took all the pain that came along.
So are you saying then, I'm sorry, so was this a real bag then or not?
Sorry?
Was this a real bag or you said it was an imaginary bag? What's that?
Imaginary bag.
Okay. So you visualized or thought more and more about the things you really, really wanted. And actually, I think it'd be useful for the audience too, given the impressive things you've accomplished since then. Talk about where you started in life. You said you grew up poor. Again, that means different things to different people, especially with a global audience. So can you talk a little bit about that? I'm not going to pretend to know what poor in Singapore was like in the 1950s or 60s.
They told me my father was quite well to do. That was before the World War II. I was born in 1951, post-war. But by then he had lost everything. During the good times, I understand he had 3 wives and 17 children during the good times. And after the war, he lost everything. But most of all, I believe he lost his will to the resilience wasn't there after the war. So I grew up in a poor family. I was last of 6 children from my mother, who was the 3rd wife. All the other wives had left. And we just grew up in poverty. I remember we got evicted. We come home sometimes, there's no water and electricity in the house because they couldn't pay the bills. As far as I remember, my father never held a job after as long as I can remember. So things were tough.
So do you know what happened to your dad, such that he lost everything? I mean, was it taken away or?
Yes, during the war, he had a little factory that makes perfumes. When the Japanese came, he lost it.
Okay.
I guess maybe some other personal poor decisions, but he just lost everything. My mother never talked about it. But my mother was a great mom. Anyway, that's another thing. So we grew up in poverty. I would go to school sometimes. I would get 10 cents to buy a bowl of rice, and for 30 cents, you go to a chicken rice shop. You know, when in the Chinese chicken rice shop, they'll cut a chicken, they'll cut off the neck first, and they throw it into a bin. Then that's swill. And for 30 cents, you get 3 necks.
Okay.
Chicken. and you cut it up, and that would be lunch.
So talk about how this upbringing or these experiences influenced you to want more for yourself when you decided you were going to commit once and for all to being in the life insurance business.
I watched, when I was a child, I watched my parents quarrel endlessly because there was no money. And I didn't want that. I just didn't want that. I served first class passengers in Singapore Airlines, and I just look at wealthy people, they're different, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I say, why can't I be rich too? And all these were the things that made me think again, and I guess finally the motivation was so strong that I just wanted to make it. You've got to come to that point,
right,
in life. You've got to come to that point in life when you really want to make it.
And talk about your journey. So you committed to being in life insurance, and you clearly had some great success. Now, were you always on the production side? Did you ever manage other people to help them develop their own careers?
I did. I was in doing personal sales for 5 years.
Okay.
During that time, I did my $1 million roundtable 3 years in a row.
Nice.
At that time, and even now, I think in Singapore, when you can sell, the company normally usually comes up to you and say, why don't you try agency leadership, take your own team.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that I wasn't really made for leadership because I'm a self-achiever. Self-achievers don't make the best bosses,
mm-hmm.
unless they wear a different hat when they go to work, you know.
Right.
But I did what I had to do, and I did build a team. We won many company awards. I had a great time selling and managing.
And then what best practices did you teach your team that you'd had success with that got you to $1 Million Roundtable? And I'd have to say you got there awfully fast. If you were in sales 5 years, you did 3 years MDRT. That's you made massive changes by the sounds of it.
I made my MDRT on my second year back in the business. On my first year, I missed it by a whisker.
Holy cow, that's amazing. It sounds like you were a completely different person when you went back to full-time.
I was. They always ask me, what's this? What made the difference? What's that turning point? I just got to make it. When you come to grips with yourself one day, when you realize that, like I said, you just got to do it. Nobody's going to do it for you. That's the day when I grew up.
And how do you help? What for people listening? What advice would you have for them to, if they're not feeling that way today, to get to that point?
You got to come to terms with yourself. You got to ask yourself, like I said, the truth will set you free. I finally sat down with myself and I thought about it, and I said, I'm not getting anywhere. You got to search yourself and say, what do you really want, and where you are now, and where you're heading. If where you are now and where you're heading isn't going to get you what you want and where you want, you cannot stay there.
And so when you had people, and thank you for that, that's really inspiring content. When you had people on your team who didn't appear to have that same level of commitment and drive, and I know you had that because everybody has it. How did you help them? And again, I know. Also, should acknowledge. I'm assuming you can't help everybody, but what kinds of things did you do? Because my experience is that, that's why I'm running this podcast. Really, is that everybody would tell you they want a lot more out of their lives, and many of us don't always follow through to do those things. And I'm determined to find out more useful things that can help more people to get where they really want to go, or at least significantly much, much further. And that's why I'm having this conversation with you. So what kinds of things did you do to help people make much more progress?
You just have to constantly motivate. You've got to constantly supervise, encourage. You see, the self-achievers are easy. They want to make it. They're willing to pay the price. You show them the way, they will find their way. You teach them something, they'll even enhance on your ideas. The 70%ers, what we call the aeroplanes. The 10%ers are the helicopters, right? They just come in and it's immediate success. The 70%ers are like aeroplanes. They have to struggle for some time before they can take off. But when they take off, they can do as well as the 10%ers. During this time, yes, it is up to them, really. The fact is this: if you do something, I can teach you. But if you won't do something, I cannot help you. Nobody can. So for those who are willing to be taught, willing to be supervised, willing to do what you tell them, they have the discipline, they will make it. And for those who just won't do what they have to do, well, that's your choice. If that's what you want, let it be. That's why not everyone. Tony Gordon said it right. He said it exactly. Success comes to those who choose it. Success doesn't come to the chosen few. It comes to those who choose it.
And then, so what's your take or feeling about limiting beliefs? Because many people will, know what to do, and they would say they do want to do it, but then there's that voice in their mind that keeps telling them that they're not good enough, that they don't really deserve it. And so in the end, they maybe try for a little while, but don't follow through enough. I mean, you must have had people like that. I mean, all of us have some of those here and there. So again, how did you help people get past limiting beliefs?
Okay. I suggest reading and watching videos of, like autobiographies of successful people. When you read autobiographies or you watch videos on successful people, one thing is that there's a common denominator. They all start somewhere and they work their butts off, and they start having this belief. You don't have to do great things to have self-belief. You start doing the small things. You try and close a case. Give yourself a target. This week I'll try and do one case. And then you can do it. Then you feel a bit more confident. And then it grows on you. It's just like computer games today. I mean, they got 700 levels, In the first level, you for the first time you try, you get killed in 5 seconds. And then you try, and you can do first level, then you go to second level. You grow slowly. Mm-hmm. Like when I first left the airlines, my first goal was to earn the same amount as I can in the airlines, so at least I can maintain myself. Mm-hmm. In my first month, I could do that already. And then you say, why don't I try and do $1 million club at the time? And I did that in 3 months. And then you start having this belief, hey, you can do it. And then you just got to have bigger goals. And while you're doing that, if you really work hard, things will happen. The problem with people is that when they get the rejection and then they die, they just can't lift themselves up. You have to. So if you cannot lift yourself up, then you let me lift you up. I make you do it. If you cannot self-discipline, then I will discipline you. And if you are willing to accept that, if I tell you to make 10 calls and you do 10 calls, mm-hmm. you will be somewhere. The problem with the failures are the people who fail are those who can't do. You teach them, but then you find that they won't do. Because if you were to do what you have to do, you will make it. Any student who studies hard enough will pass his exams. And selling is the same. If you make enough calls, if you learn how to do a sales presentation and you keep at it, you will get better. Mm-hmm. That belief has to come from you, from these little bits and the little successes that you have.
Okay, so in summarizing some of the things you've covered then, you're saying that belief is something that you can build gradually that will get you further and further towards where you want to go. As long as you keep doing the small things, then the confidence grows. And then I'm interpreting more than what you said perhaps, but then you said when you get rejected, if you take it really badly, then leverage or use other people to hold you more accountable to, I guess, get you back on track. And, make sure that you follow through even when you don't feel like it. But perhaps the hardest thing or the mistake to make is to not have people around you that will hold you accountable, so that if you do get in a funk, then, you obviously just want to get out of it as fast as you can. And so that's interesting. So you genuinely believe that success is a choice?
It is a choice. You are what you think. If you think you can't make it, you probably won't.
Mm-hmm.
And how you think depends on the books you read, the people you talk with, right? You speak with. So if you fill yourself with the more good, you become more good.
So
remember the story of the story of the Red Indians. The Red Indian chief was telling his son, on each of us we have a black wolf and a white wolf, a good wolf and a bad wolf inside us,
mm-hmm.
and they're fighting all the time. And the son asked the father, which wolf will win? And the father said, depends on which wolf you feed more.
Yeah, right.
So the reading and the watching the tapes helped me a lot.
Did you have any daily rituals that worked well for you in terms of whether it was goal setting or visualizing or prayer or meditation or anything along those lines that you did, day in, day out, either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day?
I think I self-motivated a lot. I kept opening my bag of dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I did that a lot. I wanted a Mercedes. I would go to the Mercedes showroom and ogle at the cars. I would like beautiful home. I would buy home magazines to look at it. I would buy travel magazines to think of all the places that I can go to when I can afford it. Self-motivate a lot.
So what was one of your favorite stories that came true? One of your favorite dreams that came true from your bag?
Everything came true. Everything. I had a great career. I mean, I was on the money side. It was good. It was very good money. I had all the cars that I wanted. I had the Mercedes ones, I had the BMW ones, I had the Jaguar ones. I got married. My family, I live in a beautiful home.
Mm-hmm.
My children, they have whatever they need. I get to go on holidays. I'm financially sound.
And then what prompted you to move from managing? I don't know the timeline, but you went from managing, and I know in recent years you've spoken to many huge audiences all across Asia, certainly thousands and thousands of people. So what prompted you to make that change?
I came back to the business for the fourth time in 1980. In the first year I did very well. I missed $1 Million Round Table by a whisker. But what happened was 1981. 1981 was a year that mapped out the rest of my life. I attended the local LUA Congress. First time in my life. By then I was struggling again, after 4 months. I don't know whether I'm going to make it this year. And Norman Levine was the speaker. Never seen him, never heard him, didn't know who he was. I was in an audience of about 700 people. And as he spoke, I was completely mesmerized by this man. He was incredible. That day, he made me dream more than ever. He asked a question to the audience, how many of you want to make $1 Million Round Table this year? And out of the audience of 700, I think there were only about 10 of us who meekly stood up.
Oh, wow.
You must remember in 1980, it was not easy to do $1 Million Round Table in those days. There were only a few qualifiers from the whole of Singapore. And I was one of those who stood up, and he said, if you really commit yourself to doing it, you'll get it done.
Mm-hmm.
It was a commitment that I made. I stood up in front of, in the hall of 700, one of the 10. But something else really happened was that as he spoke, I dreamed, and I said, one day I want to be like him. I want to speak. Because as he was impacting my life positively, I said, I would really like to do that. I would like to impact other people's lives. But to do that, to be a speaker, you got to have some production, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got no production, nobody's going to invite you. So $1 million table, round table was a good way to start. So that year I made my $1 million round table. I remember when I was given the award in my company's presentation night, that year there were only 14 of us from AIA made it. Last year in AIA, the same company, 571 qualifiers. But in 1981, there were only 14 of us. So every year it became $1 million round table for 3 years, and then I went to management. But it was Norman Levine that really impacted my life.
And a slightly different question about speaking, but having spoken a lot myself, I want you to talk about, most people, I don't know, I supposedly have a great fear of speaking to groups. So can you talk about things that you've done that helped you get more comfortable with it?
I wanted to speak. I hear other speakers. I learn from them. So after doing $1 Million Roundtable for 2 years, I got invited to an agency meeting. Mm-hmm. So excited. I went there with all my preparation, and they don't have PowerPoints at that time. Mm-hmm. So they overhead projector with all my people. And I showed up to the agency meeting, and there were 2 people.
2?
The manager and his agent. And I spoke. I did whatever I can. And soon you get better, right? You as you go along, you get invited, then you get better. And finally, in 1984, AIA Malaysia wanted a speaker for their annual meeting. Mm-hmm. Company said, you should go. You've been doing $1 Million Roundtable 3 years or 2 years. So I went there and I spoke. And in those days, they videoed your talks, and they would darken the whole room. And I was given the graveyard shift, the 2 p.m. shift.
Okay, right. Yes.
I had a reputation that preceded me. This guy is funny, he can talk, So they put me at the... And as I spoke, the hall went so quiet. And I thought I was getting to them, and I looked under the light, and everyone was sleeping.
No way.
I did a horrible talk. I knew I was, it's out of bed, I was perspiring, and most people would have given up then. It was horrid. Next year I became an agency leader, and I had a lot more practice.
Yeah.
There is a speaker, his name is AC, initials AC, NG. Mm-hmm. He was Malaysia. AC is a very good speaker. He's humorous. He's an incredible guy. And he told me, because we were in Hong Kong together, and he said, Robert, you have good stories to tell, except you don't know how to tell them. He says, why don't you just be yourself? You got humor, use humor. The Asian audience gives you about a minute before they decide. They will decide in a minute whether they want to listen to you or not. And if you don't get them in the first minute, if you're different, unless you're different or you're humorous or you can make an impact, and you tell your stories and tell it from your heart. For a long time, I was speaking from my head. I say, speak from your heart. Just tell them. You don't worry about your diction. Don't worry about anything. Just be yourself. And then I started doing that, and I started using humor a lot, and things took off.
It's not easy to do, though, to just turn on humor at all. I mean, because that can backfire, or people might not find it funny, or if it seems like you're forcing it, then it can really backfire. So I feel like with humor, well, I don't know, in my experience, it's something that I almost prefer it when it comes unexpectedly or in an impromptu way, and then maybe then it can build on itself. But I think you're talking about a different thing in a way, which is the skill of telling a story and telling it in an engaging, humorous way. But it's good to hear, because it's quite funny, because when I first asked you that question, I thought you were going to say, well, Matt, I've really had no worries about speaking to audiences at all. But again, speaking, to me, there's definitely a difference between speaking to 50 people and thousands of people. So again, can you talk about that? I mean, how... The first time you had an audience of over 1,000 people, what did you say to yourself to come across like you were comfortable and confident?
Well, you got to know what you want to talk about for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always your opening lines. I believe in your opening lines. You got to know exactly what you want to say the moment you start talking.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for that first minute or the first few sentences, you got to know what you want to say. Because if you fumble on those first few sentences, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to lose the momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So I always know what I want to say when I get on the stage. And then I just say it, and then maybe I'll start with a story or something like that. And,
Mm-hmm.
it would be laughter, and then you get relaxed, and then the audience are relaxed, and then everything will probably flow. Will flow back better.
Well, that's great advice. So what else do you think has helped you over the years? I mean, because the way you've told your story, it sounds like once 1980 came, everything went really well, and I'm sure you had times that weren't easy. You know, other things happened in your life that made things difficult or challenging. So, I mean, what else has helped you overcome difficult times since you, I guess, found your calling in 1980?
I had good years, very good years in the 80s as a producer and as an agency leader. I was invited to many LUA meetings, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, frequently invited. Things were very good. Then what happened was in 1989, I was approached by the LUA to, why don't I do some work for the local association.
And let me stop you for a second, because people listening, most of them won't have heard of the LUA. What does that stand for?
Life Underwriters Association.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
In most countries, it's called the LUA. In Singapore now, it's called by a different name.
Mm-hmm.
It means the same. It's the National Association for Life Insurance People.
Got it. Okay.
So in 1989, I was asked to speak at the local LUA association.
Mm-hmm.
Then subsequently, they say, "Why don't you come and help?" So I went into the committee. I took a post, and I helped. And that was 1990. Sorry, 1990. I went into the LUA, and they will have an annual meeting like the one I had in 1981 when I heard Norman Levine. So in 1990, it's quite traditional that they will appoint the next Congress chairman. And I'm always complaining about how things are done. Why can't it be done this way? Why can't it be done that way? So they say, Robert, since you think you're always giving so many suggestions, why don't you run the next Congress? So I said yes. And I told them I want a Congress for 5,000 people. And they said, you must be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
We are struggling to get 1,000. How do you want to do 5,000? So I said, it's easy. I said, first of all, you invite the best speakers you can think of. Then when you have good speakers, the crowd will come, right? And when they come, many people will come. We can then lower the price of the Congress, because money has always been a problem, especially with struggling agents. If you ask for them for $300-400, it is a lot of money. So I said, why don't we get the best speakers? Then people will come and we can lower the price down to below $200. So they said, okay. They were very good.
Mm-hmm.
Philip Xia at that time, he was the president. He said, okay, you do it. So I said, how it's done is, we don't market just in Singapore, we market in Malaysia, we market in Thailand, in the Philippines, because by then I have many friends there.
Mm-hmm.
I've been speaking in those countries. And then the next president came on, Wee Tiong Hao said, let's call it the Asia Pacific Life Insurance Congress, APLIC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I went to work on APLIC for 18 months. To get the good speakers, I had a big hand in choosing the speakers. Mehdi Fahazadeh, the Iranian who's still alive and still selling life insurance in Metropolitan Life, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a book called Nothing is Impossible, which as an agent in 1981 I bought and I read it. read it over and over again. And he was the one who kept telling me, nothing is impossible. If a man really wants to do something, he can get it done. So we invited Mehdi, and the other person we invited was Norman Levine.
Okay.
I had the pleasure to call him. He didn't know who I was. I said, Mr. Levine, my name is Robert Young from Singapore. We're organizing an LUA Congress. We'd like you to come. And his first question was, how many are you expecting? I said 5,000. And he laughed and he says, look, I've been to your Congress. Let's do a 700. 1,000 is a struggle. I said, we're going to have 5,000. I said, but you come. And he says, well, if we're going to have 5,000, I'll come. So we had a great committee. We worked on marketing it. We sold tickets in Singapore. We went to Malaysia. We were doing seminars and selling it. And on opening day in September 1991, we had 5,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
Norman Levine was the keynote speaker.
Okay.
I didn't get to meet him at all. He's my hero, my mentor, my whatever you call it. 10 years there. I didn't get a chance to speak with him because I was running the Congress.
Oh.
But the Congress was very successful. The membership in the local association went up to, I think, 3,000 or 4,000.
Wow.
It was a triple jump. The net profit for the association was over $250,000 at that time, which was big money. So the Asia Pacific Congress took off. All the LUA presidents met. They formed a council to help each other, see what they can do for each other. And then we agreed. My dream was that this Congress will move from one country to another and maybe every 2 years. So our Malaysian friends, of course, took 1993. The Australians came and said they wanted to have it in 1995.
Nice.
Hong Kong said 1997 when we're having our independence from, when we go back to China.
Oh, right.
You know, we want to have it. 1997 was the year when Hong Kong was given back to China. They want to have it 1997. So it went on, and Bangkok and Thailand took over. So anyway, what happened was in 1991, the Congress took off. In 1994-95, I was invited to speak in Philippines, and the other speaker was Norman Levine on the same platform. I told the organizers, I said, if you can try and get him in my talk, get him to be in the hall when I'm speaking. And they did, and he was nice enough to sit in the front row with his wife, Sandy. And I spoke. And then at the end of it, I told everyone that it was him who inspired me.
Yeah.
And what happened in 1981? What happened in 1981 that changed my whole life? After the talk, I brought him up to stage. I remember in 1981, he recited he read the lyrics of the song "The Impossible Dream." That day, I said I'll sing it for him on the stage, and I just sang. So it was a very good talk that day.
Did you get teary-eyed when you made the presentation?
I was teary-eyed when I talk about what he did, how he changed me in 1981. And then it was wonderful that I'm on the same platform with him after 14 years.
So there was something he said that gave you enough confidence and to believe that what he was saying was true and that you could do it. I mean, is that about right? I'm assuming it goes deeper than that, but this, on the same level, somehow hearing it from him made it real. Is that what it was? Have you heard Norman Levine? I probably haven't. I'm really embarrassed because if I have, it's been quite a long time.
Anyway,
but the name is so familiar to me. I just can't imagine I haven't.
At one time in the 80s, I believe he was sort of regarded as the king chicken of life insurance in America, which makes it the whole then.
Right.
So listening to him, and he was really, really good. His voice, that hour was magical for me.
Yeah.
He inspired me. The thing was that he inspired me. to do $1 Million Roundtable, to do something with my life, and also to be a speaker. So I managed to repay, to thank him in the Philippines. After my talk, we sat down to talk, and I asked him if he would like to adopt me. My father passed when I was 17. I never had a father figure in my life. So he adopted me. He called me son, and I call him dad. Over the next 20 years, we kept in touch. We appeared on several platforms together. Just knowing that he knows me and he calls me son, I just kept on doing well, because I cannot tell him 1 year I had a bad year, you know. So I managed to maintain maintain my business well, and most of all, I did what I like best, which was speaking. I spoke and more, and for 20 years I spoke for free.
Talk about The Impossible Dream. I'm actually not familiar with that song. Do you know who sang it?
It first was featured in the play The Men from La Mancha.
Okay.
To dream the impossible dream. You get the lyrics?
Yeah.
Dream
I will.
To fight the unbeatable foe. To fight the unbeatable foe. To bear with unbearable sorrow. The song was very motivating, about reaching for the stars, you know, reaching for something and not giving up.
I love it.
So
I know when we spoke at the same event, I know you sang. No, my brain.
I had the song "Impossible Dream" played.
Yeah, My Way. You sang "My Way" when you spoke in Malaysia.
Frankly, it was a horrid talk. I didn't like it. Okay, but never mind. It's not important.
Okay.
There are two things that I wanted to tell the audience. Maybe it didn't come out right the other day, but my way is really true. You want to do something in your life, you've got to do it, and you do it your way. I did it my way. My career, I'm not the most successful person financially or money-wise in the life insurance business, but when I look back at my career, I think I've done a lot. It's not self-praise, but the Asia Pacific Congress was something that I pulled it out. My dream, my idea, I managed to make it come true. The 17th is being held in Hong Kong at the end of May, and the 18th will be held in Singapore again.
Okay, nice.
Yes, in 2021, we're full 30 years after the first one.
That's fantastic. Well, there's some of your legacy, and I can't imagine you haven't influenced plenty of people yourself who got to hear you in the audience as well. I don't know if you ever got a lot of feedback on that, but I can't imagine that you didn't. I know that you got some glowing testimonials from people that talk about that.
Yes.
So 3 final questions for you, Robert. I'm not sure whether it's the day you went to the hotel and thought about jumping out the window, or the day you started back up in 1980. But since then, who have you become?
Who have I become?
What kind of person?
I really try to be a better person every day. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes I accomplish something. I just feel that I didn't want to be in the life insurance business running an agency for the rest of my life. I wanted to do what I wanted to do in 1981, was to be a speaker, to inspire people. So for 20 years I spoke for free. Today I charge some money. It doesn't matter. If you don't have a budget, I'll work for less. It doesn't matter. But I know from the feedback of, like you said, after my talks, a lot of people are inspired. I do a lot of recruitment seminars now to encourage people to come into the life insurance business. I I look back at my life, there is a life of purpose. I did something for myself. Now, what really happened was in 2013, Norman Levine spoke in Singapore again on Applic. I was the other speaker also.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2011, I can't remember the dates exactly. And he told me he was not feeling well. He was actually getting cancer. We still made it to Philippines then 2 years later. And in 2016, sorry, Norman said he's down with cancer. So he has two sons in Asia. Myself in Singapore, we call him Dad, and he always refers to another person in Thailand, Kun Montri Saing Uraipon, Kun Montri, as his son in Asia. And Montri and I are very good friends, coincidentally. And when we heard he was down with cancer, final stage, we flew to America. We met in LA, rented a car, drove to Indian Wells. We checked into a hotel. We went to visit Norman Levine every day for 3 days. Spent time with him. Norman was superb. He was ready to go. He said because he had an incredible life, and he said he was very happy. He remembered all the good times in Asia because he loved Asia. He remembered the 2 or 3 Peking ducks that I bought for him at one sitting because he loved Peking ducks and all the good times he had in Asia, in the Philippines, in Thailand. And we told Norman, we said, we're here because we want to see you before you go, and we're not coming back for your funeral. And he says, yes, I'll prefer that. And I say, yeah, we prefer that too. I'd rather see you and speak with you and be with you than coming to your funeral. It doesn't mean a thing when you're dead, you know. And 2 weeks later, he passed. So sometimes when I speak, I talk about him because it's also a story about gratitude. When somebody inspires your life, how do you thank him? And I did all I can to thank him. He was introduced to Asia in a big way through the Applic Congress, and I've always dedicated my success a lot to him.
I've got to ask this. Was there anything else in his speech that just gripped your heart? Because I know my wording has not done it justice.
I think it was the way he read the lyrics of The Impossible Dream. He's a wonderful speaker. He read beautifully, and that really inspired me. But he wrote many books, and one of them was Yes, You Can. Yes, You Can. When we were at his home, he told us to go to his garage and take whatever we wanted. And I picked some books and I got it autographed.
Okay.
And one of them was Yes, You Can. And in it, he wrote me a special note. It says, you have proven that yes, you can.
Nice.
And to me, I think that's simply wrong.
Okay. Well, these are definitely 2 things I want to go and pursue after this. As I said, in wrapping up, you'd said that you feel like you've definitely become a better person every day. What's a first step for people listening who want to get on that same journey?
You got to know what you want. It's what you want in the end. For me, I looked down and I said, what do I want when I retire? You know, I want to have a comfortable life. I want to be financially sound. I want to have feel that I've made my life. I've done something good with my life. Have a sense of purpose. You always start with the end in mind, and then you work towards it. So it started by being financially sound. My idea of balanced life is important, but your first thing got to balance is your checkbook. You know.
Oh, that's good. I've never heard that before.
Balance your checkbook, and I went to do that. And then when you are doing well, you help other people. In 1983, or 84, I heard Rasmussen Rasmussen was the past $1 million round table president. He spoke at my company's convention in Honolulu. And I remember there was another magical moment. He said, we all have two hands. He said, one hand always reaching up to pull yourself up, and the other hand always reaching down to help pull somebody up. So, all this combined, these are the little pieces that put into that I took it in my life, and I tried to live it that way.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. And lastly, how can listeners keep in touch with you?
I've been procrastinating on writing my book. I believe this year I'm going to start it. I'm on my Facebook, but my Facebook has got, I'm not doing what you're doing, having a podcast and all that. I'm half retired. I spend my time when I'm not speaking. I go to the movies with my wife. I go on holidays. I'm not building a career in speaking.
Yeah.
Speaking is only to share my experience and to inspire people to come into this wonderful business. It's given me everything.
So would this be a good time to stand up and commit to finishing that book?
Yes, I have to. And saying it today kind of locks me in, right?
Well, that would be the idea. If you stood up for Norm Levine, I mean, I'm not Norm Levine, that's for sure, but yeah, maybe this would be a good time to make a public commitment, and that helps you get back to that work discipline to get it done, because it sounds like there's stories that people might not otherwise hear, and that would be really sad. So, because you've got, I mean, we've only touched on many of them, I'm quite sure of that. And I think this has been an honor to hear get a flavor for some of the things you've done and share. I appreciate you so much for sharing some of the wisdom that's helped you help others and help yourself. And I'm fascinated by, I've never met anyone who kept going back again and again and again to make something happen. And as you explained, sometimes that just takes us a while, or we just have to go through quite a lot of pain before we finally talked about the razor blade. But for many of us, I think we just have to go through a certain amount of pain. And sometimes that's years before we finally get, say, I've had enough of this. And so people such as yourself kind of giving people practical suggestions on what to do, as you say, the recipes out there is, that's what we need to hear. More of us, more often. So thank you so much. And Robert, just a couple of things. This is actually for everyone listening, really. But I always say this. So again, having said all of what I've said, don't put anyone on a pedestal that you're hearing on the show. We're all human. We all have had off days. None of us are perfect in every area of our life all the time. So please, be encouraged. Take the good stuff that you've heard and be encouraged that if Robert can do it, then you absolutely can too. And I think that's why I love the story. It's not been sugar-coated in any way. And then thank you so much for listening today. I can't imagine you didn't get some great ideas. So please, the most important thing is obviously do something with those ideas. Other than that, I subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Please leave a review. Show notes are on my website, matt-anderson.com, matt-anderson.com. You'll find the Robert Young page up in about 2 to 3 weeks from now. And other than that, I'll sign off with my favorite question, which was, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? I'm Matt Anderson, and this was The Road Not Taken.